Hello, and welcome back to Minister of Revenge. Before we begin, I want to introduce myself. My name is Carolyn, and I'm 64 years old, and if you're joining me today, it's probably because you, too, have reached a certain age and realized that the debts you owe others have finally been paid. I had spent most of my life giving. It wasn't just giving, really. It was sacrificing. Giving to a marriage that ran cold 15 years ago. Giving to my children, raising them not just to be successful, but decent. Giving to my aging parents until their last breath. Giving to my community, serving on committees and boards until my bones ached. At 64, I thought I had finally earned something more valuable than a reward. I'd earned peace, not the loud, celebratory kind, but a quiet, well-deserved chapter of life where my primary responsibility was simply to myself. A chapter where no one needed my credit card, my opinion, or my time every 5 minutes. My mornings were my liturgy, a quiet ritual, the soft chime of the old grandfather clock, a cup of cinnamon tea always strong on the back porch, listening to the world stretch awake. I'd water the small herb garden I planted last spring, and sometimes call my grandchildren before the school bus came. Simple, gentle things. After a lifetime of running, those slow mornings felt like healing. But my favorite sanctuary wasn't my main home. It was the small beach house my mother left me. It was built in the 50s, a weathered little place with creaky floors that sang when you walked on them, sun-bleached shutters, and a porch swing older than I was. It wasn't a luxury property. It was history. That house smelled like sea salt and old linen, and it was the only place I felt I could truly shed the roles of wife, mother, and volunteer. It was where I went when life got too loud, too complicated, or too demanding. Losing that house would have been like losing the last piece of my mother. It was my anchor, my last untouchable possession. Now, before I continue, I'd love to know where you are watching from, and if you believe that loyalty and respect should matter, especially in a family, consider subscribing to Minister of Revenge. We focus on stories where justice doesn't come with a bang, but with a precise, calculated inevitability. It was a mundane Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day designed for watering ferns and reading a good mystery. I walked to the mailbox and found a single, thick white envelope from a law office I didn't recognize. Stone and Gray. Attorneys at law. I opened it in my kitchen. The sunlight was pouring over the countertop, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. But suddenly, the air felt heavy and cold. I thought it was a mistake, a billing error, perhaps. But my hands began to shake violently when I saw the heading, Property Transfer Completed. I skimmed the document, past the legalese and the filing dates, until I found it my own name, in shaky script, under the section marked, Seller Signature. Except it wasn't mine. It was a crude, rushed forgery. And then I turned to the buyer's information. The new owner, Diane Kincaid, my daughter, Megan's mother-in-law. The shock wasn't like a sudden punch. It was like the slow, terrifying realization that the floor beneath you is collapsing. I didn't want to understand. I closed my eyes and whispered a denial, but the meaning was staring me in the face, stark and vicious. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, had stolen my signature and sold the only property that mattered to me to gain favor with her husband's wealthy family. I drove to Megan's house without thinking, without even stopping to change out of my gardening clothes. The drive was a blur of righteous adrenaline. She was standing in her gourmet kitchen, arranging artisanal crackers on a wooden board. When I walked in without knocking, the guilt on her face was a roadmap. It gave me the complete answer before she ever said a word. I didn't raise my voice. The calmness scared me more than any anger would have. What Did you do? She tried to laugh it off, a nervous, high-pitched sound. Mom, I was going to tell you eventually. It wasn't stealing, it was transferring. Look, you never use it. Eric's parents have been looking for a place near the shore for years, and they were willing to pay very well. She had the audacity to lean in, as if sharing a secret. Think of the money, Mom. You don't need the house, and we could really use the capital for Eric's business. She said it made more sense. She stood there, comparing the value of my mother's memory, my personal refuge, to a business transaction. I saw her not as my child, but as an adult stranger who had just vandalized my soul. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I just turned and walked out the door. The anger came later. On that drive home, something in me hardened, something old, something wise, something deeply tired of being exploited. I had spent my entire life protecting this family. They knew my heart. They knew how much that little house meant to me. I told them countless times it was my retirement, my legacy, my mother's voice, and still they did this. They tried to erase me. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m, not weeping into a pillow, but hunched over a lamp, planning. I pulled out my mother's original, hand-typed will. There was a specific clause, almost forgotten. Property may not be sold or transferred without the written consent of the beneficiary and a legal witness. The sale wasn't just cruel. It was definitively illegal. I called an old friend, Joyce, a retired real estate attorney who never sugarcoated anything. She had seen it all. We met at the beach house the next morning. Joyce looked over the forged document and the will, shook her head once, and gave a low whistle. Carolyn, she said, Megan and her in-laws are in serious trouble. This is textbook forgery, illegal transfer, and misrepresentation. They haven't just bought a house, they've bought a civil and potentially criminal lawsuit. Joyce asked me what my endgame was. Do you want to ruin your daughter's life? Because you absolutely can. I looked out at the ocean, at the gentle waves rolling in. No, Joyce, I don't want to ruin her. I want to save myself. I want control back. I want my dignity. I want to remind my daughter that I am not a bank account or a stepping stone. I am her mother, and I still have rights she cannot simply dissolve for profit. We formed a plan. Nothing dramatic. No shouting matches in court. Just precise, patient, and effective legal leverage. The plan was designed to restore my property and rearrange my daughter's priorities. 2 weeks later, the silence from Megan had become deafening. Finally, she broke it with a dinner invitation. A make-up dinner, she called it. Eric's parents, the Kincaids, were there too, of course. The table was set with perfect china. Everyone was excessively cheerful, laughing a little too loud, talking over each other about superficial things, as if the forged signature was just a misunderstanding they could paper over with hors d'oeuvres. They started talking casually about their plans, repainting my porch swing, putting in a new dock, finally modernizing that creaky old place. They spoke about the house as if I had gifted it to them freely, a benign, senile old woman giving up her things. I sat there quietly, watching the steam curl off my tea, waiting for the precise moment. I let the Kincaids talk for a full 5 minutes about their new investment. Then I cleared my throat. The room went silent. That's lovely, I said, my voice cutting through the forced cheer like glass. But the sale hasn't gone through. In fact, it's been formally rejected. Mrs. Kincaid, Diane, froze with a fork halfway to her mouth. What are you talking about, Carolyn? The lawyer notified me this morning. I continued. meeting Megan's eyes, which were now wide with panic. The transfer was invalid. The signature, of course, was forged. I've already taken the necessary legal steps to restore full ownership to me and to invalidate all subsequent agreements. The Kincaids don't own the house, and I'm afraid they are now officially trespassing when they visit. The room fell completely silent. The sound of a single glass of water being set down was deafening. Eric's parents were furious. They started shouting at Megan, demanding to know what she had told them about the paperwork. They left almost immediately, arguing on their way out about their wasted capital. Megan burst into tears, instantly reverting to the child who knew she'd been caught. Eric blamed her, she blamed him. They began to dismantle their marriage right there, over the remains of the roast chicken. But I didn't stay to watch the chaos. My dignity demanded an exit. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked to the door. Megan followed me onto the porch, tears streaming down her face, begging me to talk, begging me to just accept the cash and let it go. She kept asking, "Why are you doing this to me, Mom? Why?" I turned to her one last time, my face perfectly neutral. "Megan, I'm not doing anything to you. I am simply undoing what you tried to do to me. You spent decades benefiting from my protection, my love, and my generosity." I looked down the street, toward the silent, waiting car. "I'm done giving to people who take without permission. That house was my peace. You tried to sell it. Now you must live with the consequence of having sold your own mother's trust." I got in my car and drove away. For the first time in years, my hands didn't shake. They felt steady. They felt capable. A month later, I had fully restored ownership of the beach house. I repainted the porch swing bright nautical blue. I planted my mother's favorite hydrangeas. I sat on the steps with a book and realized something profound. Being gentle does not mean being weak. And keeping the peace does not mean letting yourself be erased. Experience had taught me how to survive. Betrayal taught me how to fight. If you believe that women over 55 deserve to reclaim their power and their property, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. And subscribe to Minister of Revenge so you never miss a story where a quiet life is finally defended.